You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The Chicago Bears have used the bye week to rest up and get a little more healthy for the second half of the season, which could include the pending return of the Bears' other first-round pick, really the debut of Teven Jenkins. This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lorin Cox. I'm an analyst for Pro Football Focus, and I'm here to bring you your daily in-depth Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at Locked On Bears. You can like Locked On Bears on Facebook. Join the Locked On Bears Facebook group for even more Bears talk. And make sure that you're subscribed to the Locked On Bears YouTube channel to keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. On the show today, we get an update on rookie offensive tackle Teven Jenkins. He's missed every part of this season up to this point on injured reserve with the back injury, but the Bears formally activated him to return to practice. And now they have a window here to see how he's doing physically, and the plan being to get him back on this 53-man roster, an active roster. But the real question is, where does he fit into this Bears offensive line right now that's playing some of the best football we've seen from them thus far this season? We'll hear from head coach Matt Nagys on kind of what they're trying to weigh here, and we'll go through some of the Bears' different options and some of their considerations of what's best for the team right now and what's best for the team in the long term. But we start with the injury update. Jenkins ended up having back surgery in the preseason after coming to training camp with different backs than what they had anticipated. And for whatever reason, there was some nerve issue going down into his leg a little bit. And clearly he was not on pace to be ready to play in the regular season. And so they shut him down. They think they've fully cleaned it up with this surgery. And now it's just a matter of healing from that surgery and get everything back to full strength and ready to go. So he's had 9 weeks of the NFL season to kind of work through this. And obviously they wouldn't activate him for this 21-day practice window if they didn't think he would be ready to go sometime in the next 21 days. Otherwise, they would just wait to activate the window. They could have chosen at any point after, the minimum for injured reserve to activate this window, but they only do this now when he's ready and he has been cleared to return to practice. So now it's about, okay, getting into game shape, regular season shape, and getting some of that strength back and really, practicing against Robert Quinn and hopefully at some point Khalil Mack returning from injury as well will definitely do somebody like Teven Jenkins good to get them ready for facing, regular season opponents later on this season and throughout the rest of his career. But we're still trying to figure out how exactly this might shape out. But we've got more of a concrete update from Matt Nagys. Nagy kind of dodges the question specifically about, is he going to play left tackle or right tackle?
Where is he physically? What were you looking for to open this window? And when he comes back, is he on the right? Is he on the left? And how are you going to massage that between, Jason, who's filled in admirably, and this guy that I'm sure you want to get a look at?
Sure. A few things to that. So we'll have to really get him in here and see where he's at. It's been a while since Teven's put the pads on. So we'll start there. But that'll be exciting for us to see where he's at. I know he's really anxious and excited to get out there. As far as the sides, that's stuff that we'll work through with him. But it's always a positive when you have somebody, especially, when you draft a guy like we did early in the draft, and for him to be able to, do what he has to do now to get back to this point. Now we get to work through and see where he's at conditioning wise, physically where he's at. And it's just going to be honestly really an hour by hour, day by day process with him. But it's definitely a good thing to have. And we're excited to get him out there.
So for those of you watching this on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, instead of just hearing the podcast, you can see the video quality that the Bears had for Matt Nagy's press conference was like weirdly, it looked like almost like someone recorded their screen with their phone. And that's what the Chicago Bears, that's how they recorded it and put it out there. You can go look on the Bears YouTube channel where the Nagy's press conference looks like. Like they took a graphing calculator to record that press conference. But regardless, the content is much more important than the quality of the actual video footage there, and not answering specifically about left tackle versus right tackle, but getting sort of a sense of what they're looking for and where they need to see him progress here over these next couple of weeks. I wouldn't expect him to play against the Baltimore Ravens, given how recently he was just elevated to practice. But from there, I think like Nagy said, I think a little more like day-to-day, week-to-week, play-by-play type decision-making, just how his body responds to some of those practices. And maybe he's not as close to ready. I mean, it'll just kind of depend on what these days and what these practices kind of lead up to. But we'll get into a little bit more on the time window a little bit later. But it's left with a dilemma here of like, okay, the plan originally was you drafted Teven Jenkins and Larry Borom, and after you cut Charles Leno and Bobby Massey, you're pretty much just going to roll with Teven Jenkins at left tackle and Larry Borom at right tackle. So then you play Teven Jenkins at left tackle, but then you got Jason Peters there who's playing at a really high level. So then do you put Teven Jenkins then at right tackle and then bench Larry Borom? Sure, they that could work, but then is the plan to eventually put Teven Jenkins back at left tackle next year? So is he going to just get experience at a different position and not really be preparing for his long-term future role there? Like, is the plan to have Jenkins and Borom be your starting tackles of the future? So don't you want to get to them, but you don't want to bench Jason Peters necessarily, or do you move Jason Peters around? I mean, there's a lot of different options, but there's some real challenges of like how do you appease everyone? Because someone's going to end up. I mean, you got more than two guys that you want to start at two offensive tackle positions, plus other guys on the bench and maybe coming back from injury and COVID that may end up in this mix as well. I mean, part of this has been the Bears have had to come up with so many different options to start a tackle, and now a lot of their options are coming back to where like it's no longer desperation. It's more like, oh, hey, we have multiple options and not enough room for all of them. So we'll dive a little bit more deep into some of the pros and cons of each of those options and figure out just what the Bears should do with Jenkins, Borom, Peters, and the whole group of offensive tackles next on Locked On Bears. I don't know what Teven Jenkins is bound for on this offensive line right now, but in life, we're all bound for different things. And with beachbound.com vacations, you could be bound for adventure, bound for passion, bound for discovery, or bound for togetherness, bound for immersion, bound for rejuvenation, or maybe you're just bound for encountering the unexpected. Personally, when I'm at a beach resort, I'm bound to end up at a poolside bar with a nice cocktail in my hand, or maybe creating a taco flight or build your own nachos. I mean, as long as I've got a good view and a good drink, I'll be pretty much as happy as I can be. That's about what I'm looking for. But with beachbound.com, you can find the perfect beach vacation for you, no matter what you're looking for. So what are you bound for? Visit beachbound.com today. The Bears are bound to make some kind of change on their offensive line as a result of Jenkins' return. It's just a matter of what exactly they want to do. And I think I don't know that there is a perfect solution with how it stands right now. Somebody is going to end up getting benched or miffed or mistreated or just kind of disappointed at a best case scenario, disappointed that their opportunity isn't going to be there for them, because again, you got potential quality starting caliber players or players that you want to have out there on the field for you, but nothing has no flaws here in terms of strategy. So one option is put Teven Jenkins at right tackle and start Peters at left tackle, Jenkins at right tackle, and say, these are probably our two best offensive tackles. And so get your best offensive tackles on the field. That's what I'm going to do if I'm, when you talk about having your best players, right? If I can see the coaching staff saying like, these are our two best offensive tackles, let's get our two best offensive tackles on the field. As much as Larry Borom has shown flashes and we're very encouraged about him as a 5th round rookie, Teven Jenkins is a 1st round pick for a reason. And he was a better college prospect. He was drafted earlier for a reason, better scouted for a reason, right? He is supposed to be, and by all film that we've watched and all the traits and everything, he is the better prospect. So you want him at one of these two spots. And then it's like, well, Jason Peters or Larry Borom. Well, I think the veteran longtime Pro Bowler, who's not at that stage of his career anymore, but Peters is playing better than Borom. So like, I can see where that's an attractive strategy. But if Teven Jenkins is going to be your left tackle of the future, how much value? I mean, there is value to playing him at right tackle. It's NFL experience, but he's learning the other side, and it ends up being quite a different position. It has the same name, but it's right-handed versus left-handed, and you're on the back side of runs to the left and the front side of runs to the right, as opposed to the other way around. And so your responsibilities and running plays are going to be different at left tackle than right tackle, depending on what the run is. And so then next year, when you're switching to the other spot, you don't have that same experience, right? You're not able to, it doesn't transfer as much. There's certainly still a lot of value to it. I mean, pass protection is sort of still yes, depending on the blocking scheme, right? If you're sliding to the left, if you're the right tackle, you're a little bit more on your island than if you're sliding to your right. I mean, it's inverted in the same way that it is in the run blocking. And so like there is value to getting Teven Jenkins on the field anywhere, just to have experiences facing NFL pass rushers, NFL edge rushers, NFL defensive linemen, and feel that physicality and that game speed for sure. None of these strategies are necessarily bad offensive line options. There's flaws to each of them, because then you're taking Larry Borum off the field and he's not getting that development if he's going to be your right tackle of the future. So then, do you put Teven Jenkins at left tackle and then, I don't know, bench Jason Peters? I mean, he's a 39-year-old veteran who's earned that in the NFL to not be benched and disrespected necessarily. I mean, not that it's that disrespectful, but like he's playing well. And do you take a left tackle who's playing well the last few weeks and bench him and replace him with a rookie who might struggle, who might have rookie mistakes? Are you losing something on the offensive line right away, in the same way that we talked about with Justin Fields taking over for Andy Dalton, right? First start Justin Fields is not going to be as good as 10th season Andy Dalton. And first start Teven Jenkins is not going to be as good as, whatever 12th season Jason Peters, right? The veteran is going to be better right now than the rookie is in his first start. But the idea would be that you go to the rookie knowing that he will get better, and you expect him to be better eventually than the veteran. And so you accept that, there might be a drop off right away, but it's worth it in the long term to develop our rookie at that position where he is going to be the future. And the veteran knows he is not going to be the future, and he is not here to be the future. And so there's some advantage there. Or maybe there's a third. Maybe you move Jason Peters into guard. The Eagles did that last season. So then you start Teven Jenkins at left tackle, you put Jason Peters at left guard, and you put Cody Whitehair at center, and you bench Sam Mustipher, because Mustipher's been the weak link on this Bears offensive line. They need to upgrade the center position. He's been a little bit missing some of the calls in terms of pass protection. It's gotten better over the last few weeks, but there's been some struggles there. He's not the strongest in terms of anchoring against good opposing offensive or defensive linemen. And so he's been kind of a weakness when the right tackle position has been healthy with Borum now, or with, earlier in the season when it was healthier, that's been strong. And when right tackle was Alex Bars and Elijah Wilkinson and Latavius Simmons, that was the weak link, right? But as the offensive line stands right now, center is the weakness. And so you could improve center by moving Cody Whitehair to center and moving Jason Peters to left guard. So then you're keeping Peters out there. You're not benching him. You're getting Jenkins at his future spot. You're keeping Borum at his future spot. But now you're changing 3 offensive line positions, 3 guys playing brand new spots. That's dangerous. Offensive line is so much about cohesion and knowing your position and that muscle memory and learning the guy next to you. That's why this offensive line has gotten better over the last 3 or 4 weeks, because it's been the same 5 guys, right? That's part of how this works. I mean, the quality of opponent plays a big role in that too, and how we perceive the offensive line, but having the same group together, playing together for a long period of time helps them all get better. And you're disrupting 3 of your spots if you move Cody Whitehair into center, Peters into left guard, and Jenkins into left tackle. Or even if you did it the other way with James Daniels, either way, if you move Daniels to center and Peters to right guard, because right guard is actually where he played last season at the end of the year in Philadelphia when they moved him inside to guard. They kind of had the same thing. They had a young offensive tackle and some injuries, and so they moved Peters in because Peters was kind of struggling. So it's like that could be your best 5 offensive linemen on the field. Peters, Jenkins, and Whitehair, and then Daniels and Borum. That's getting all of your most talented players, but there is that sort of drop off there that you're risking breaking up that chemistry and having everybody learn new positions. And we've seen like Cody Whitehair, especially when they do this move him to center and guard thing back and forth, he's really struggled with that transition. James Daniels has too. So is pros and cons, right? Of the same thing. I think the one thing I want to see with Jenkins is that they just pick a spot for him and leave him there, and just as they're doing with Cody Whitehair right now. Like, I don't want to shake up positions, and it bothers me a little bit when I see the tweet. It's from a friend of the show, Zach Pearson, a great Bears follow on Twitter at Zach_Pearson. But he said, offensive line coach Juan Castilla told us that Teven Jenkins worked at left tackle yesterday. The plan, though, right now is to alternate him between left tackle and right tackle during practices. And God, do I hate that. It's so frustrating to have offensive linemen moving back and forth. Pick a spot for him and let him practice there and really try and master that as best he can. And I understand, like, if he's just doing conditioning stuff and getting him loose in both directions or whatever, sure, but pick a spot and put him there. I don't understand why they think they can just kind of jerk this player around back and forth and leaving him in either spot. But I think they do need to pick a spot. And I feel like there's a strategy out of the ones that we went through that makes the most sense for the Bears and makes the most sense for the future of this team and to some extent the short term of this team as well. We'll go through what I think puts the Bears offensive line in the best position right now, or what is going to be the best move for Teven Jenkins, and maybe some of the other considerations in here that we haven't gone through yet. Next on Locked On Bears. Hey, Bears fans, I want to tell you about a new app that's for basically anybody who ever buys gasoline for a vehicle or for anything. It's called Getupside. And Locked On Bears listeners can make up to 25 cents cash back per gallon every time you fill up the tank. It's super easy. You just download the free Getupside app in the App Store or in Google Play on whatever device you use. And don't forget to enter our promo code TOUCHDOWN to get a bonus 25 cents per gallon cash back on your first fill up. But you go to the tank, you don't pay full price. The money goes right into your Getupside account. There's no catch. And then you can connect your bank account if you want for a direct deposit that way. You can cash out via PayPal if you feel more comfortable with that. Or you can even go through like e-gift cards. They'll pay you in Amazon gift cards or other online retailers. Some people who fill up and drive a lot are getting as much as $200 to $300 a month in cash back just by downloading the free app. It's called Getupside and entering our promo code TOUCHDOWN. Again, that promo code is going to give you a bonus 25 cents per gallon cash back. That's up to 50 cents back on your first fill up when you download the Getupside app and enter our promo code TOUCHDOWN. When you're trying to find a home for Teven Jenkins on this offensive line right now, it's all about weighing the future versus the present. And you can imagine that Matt Nagy is probably weighing the present a little bit more heavily right now because they're 3-6, competing for playoffs, trying to at least, and trying to then save Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace's job. And so winning football games now is definitely what I think is going to be most important in their eyes. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure if there's an offensive line combination that fully does that for you. I mean, maybe Jenkins at right tackle and Peters at left tackle is the most win now friendly, but Borum hasn't been bad. So how much of an upgrade are you going to get from rookie Teven Jenkins in his first start? Probably some, but is it a night and day difference that's going to make the offense that much better by upgrading that right tackle spot slightly? No, I don't know that there's a formula here that gives you a drastic, immediate offensive line upgrade because your tackles are already playing passably well. You can get better. There is room for improvement, and Jenkins should improve the offensive line. But I don't know that it's going to drastically move the needle on this Bears offense right now, right? I mean, there's so much else that has gone into this other than specifically the offensive tackle play. It has been a problem earlier in the season, but as of where we stand right now, we're feeling a little bit better about where things stand. And so I'm just not sure that immediate focus is really going to be a difference maker right now. And so I start to think a little bit more long term. And I also think back too that an important thing that I think is getting forgotten in this is that the Bears placed Jermaine Ifedi on injured reserve with a knee injury. We don't know the extent of that knee injury, and it's possible Jermaine Ifedi could be ready to come back from the injured reserve list. He's on the COVID list right now, but he could be ready to come back from injured reserve later in the season. And there's another veteran right tackle specific option. You're not really going to put Jermaine Ifedi at left tackle. He's not in that conversation. And so knowing that Ifedi's also in my back pocket as potential competition for Larry Borum or an option there if Borum struggles or whatever, personally, I'm putting Teven Jenkins at left tackle. And I'm kind of telling Jason Peters, thanks. It was great to have you, but you were never part of the plan this season. You were fishing like 2 weeks before the season started. The plan was always Teven Jenkins, well, not always, but from the moment they got into the draft, right? And when they cut Charles Leno, the plan was, and the Bears made it pretty clear, Teven Jenkins is starting at left tackle. Larry Borom / Jermaine Ifedi is your right tackle. But the plan was always Jenkins is the Bears left tackle. Like entering training camp, going through OTAs, he was going to be your week 1 starting left tackle. So I'm not going to deviate from that plan. Jenkins is back. Jenkins is healthy. He's my left tackle. Jason Peters, it was a pleasure. You did a great job for us, and we appreciated having you on the team. We were glad to call you up from fishing, but your duty's done. He's making $1 million or $1.5 million, under $2 million on a 1-year deal. They're not financially obligated to keep playing Jason Peters. They don't have, it's not like the Eagles either, where, with Philadelphia, there was kind of this like, he was a hero and he had been there for a long time and kind of earned a certain amount of like riding off into the sunset. He was a mercenary. He came to Chicago as a mercenary. He wasn't playing for anybody. Nobody wanted him before the Bears signed him, or at least he didn't want to take any of the opportunities that were presented to him. So like, NFL's a business, man. And we don't have that sentimental value to Peters. It's like, I'd be happy to keep Peters around and put him on the bench. And if something happens to Jenkins or Borom or whatever, and you need to put Peters back in there, great. If Peters doesn't want to ride the bench and wants to be a free agent and sign somewhere else, good for you too, man. It's up to him what he would want to do. But I'm rolling with Teven Jenkins as soon as I am comfortable that he is healthy and good to go for the rest of the season. Also, in part because Jason Peters has struggled to stay healthy for a full 16-game season. The last time he did it, I think, was 2018, and he's only done it once in the last like 5 or 6 seasons. He regularly gets injured, and that's not his fault, and I'm not holding it against Peters, but I'm not going to bank on Peters being my starting left tackle for the rest of the season, because he's already missed snaps during this season with injuries, minor things, and he's come back, but it just doesn't seem like at his age, I can count on him to be durable and be there for the remainder of this full 16-game season, considering how well he's held up so far. It just seems like it's coming. So I'm not going to put Jenkins at right tackle and risk then Peters later getting hurt and having to move Jenkins back to left tackle because Peters gets hurt, because it's just something we've been able to sort of expect from him. So it's like, I'm sticking with the plan. The plan is Jenkins. He's my long-term option there. And you know what? I'll take the drop off in the first week or two that he plays. He's not going to be as good as Peters right away, but he's going to be better later, and probably sooner rather than later. And if I can put him back out there and have his first start against the Lions, I'm feeling pretty good about him against the Lions pass rushers. Cardinals, not as much. Cardinals are a really good pass rushing team, and I'm worried about him making his rookie debut against the Cardinals in this 21-day window. Ravens would be a tough team too, and I just don't think he's going to be healthy enough for this. But like, get his feet wet against the Lions to have a game under his belt before he plays the Cardinals. That seems to be a pretty ideal spot. And Nagy talked up Jason Peters. He's been a good leader. Nothing against Peters, and I don't want to throw him under the bus. I don't want to cut him. I don't want to bench him. I don't want to do any of that. But Jenkins is the future. If I'm the Bears, I'm invested in Teven Jenkins. I'm invested in his long-term success. I'm not invested in Jason Peters. He's just here to fill that gap, and the guy who he's filling in for is back. So sorry, but that's how it works at the end of your career, Jason. And so it's a risky move. It's not the perfect solution. I still think I'm risking something by taking a veteran player who's playing well and benching him. Said earlier, none of these solutions are perfect, but that's where I'm looking to go with Teven Jenkins. I'm curious what you think. I want to hear what you think the Bears should do with their offensive line. Should they move everybody around? Should they just plug in Jenkins? Should they leave Jenkins on the bench and let him develop like they wanted to leave Justin Fields on the bench for his rookie season? Or do they bench Larry Borom? Let us know, whether it's in the YouTube comments. If you're following along, watching on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, please tell me what you think, what the Bears should do with their offensive line, whether it's on Twitter at Locked On Bears, in the Locked On Bears Facebook group is where a lot more of this discussion happens too. It's a great way to join in the podcast and keep the conversation going even when you're done listening. I appreciate you making Locked On Bears your first listen today and every day. It's why we love bringing you that daily in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. And I hope you will subscribe to keep making Locked On Bears your first listen. If you're looking for your second listen on your podcast listening today, how about Locked On Bets, our national betting podcast? They have been red hot over there, and your boy Q does such a great job hosting and directing that show for Lee, our betting expert over there from Paramount Sports. So go check them out, go win some money, And it's really a nice sort of national sports perspective. If you just want more NFL, certainly Locked On NFL, Peacock and Williamson as well, do the league-wide look. Or Locked On Ravens, get to know your Bears opponent coming up this week. We'll do crossover Thursday later on with our friends from Locked On Ravens as well, so keep coming back for more of that. And we'll kind of put a bow on this bye week here in the coming days before we turn our attention to the rest of this season. So appreciate everyone who's been tuning in. Appreciate you for following along. And I hope in exchange, as always, that the Locked On Bears podcast helps you bear down.